会有他这个没有，不会拿他的。
Speaker of the United States House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi is, in the words of President Barack Obama, an extraordinary leader for the American people. She, in the past 20 years, has been the most consistent and outspoken supporter of human rights in China and around the world. Recently in Shanghai, she said she would continue to speak for human rights in China and around the world. Now, let's welcome the Honorable Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Good afternoon. I think it's now afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you very much, Yang Jianli, and Initiatives for China for bringing us together this morning and this afternoon. Words fail me to adequately tell you what an honor it is to be on the same stage and in the presence of so many of the heroes of June 4th. To have a message at the same time from His Holiness the Dalai Lama in solidarity for more openness in China and Tibet. We stand here in front of the capital of the United States, a beacon of freedom to the world, with a great history of free speech and open discussion. On this side of the Capitol, here on these grounds, we stand with people who took to heart and to mind the words of our founders, that in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, our words that talked about every person being equal and endowed by their Creator. Endowed by their Creator, not by the state, but endowed by their Creator with certain rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it was for life and liberty, and some people paid that price in Tiananmen Square. They paid with their lives and their liberty to speak out for freedom. It's interesting to me that this week there are also observances in Eastern Europe about freedom emerging there at this time 20 years ago. And for those of you who are old enough to remember Tiananmen Square, you would have seen that the students gathered in the square in May and in the days leading up to June 4th were an inspiration to the world. To the world. They inspired others to have the courage. And they had a drumbeat of liberty and freedom that was felt around the world. What they wanted was dialogue with their government on openness and freedom of speech and religion, and ending to corruption in China. They wanted that dialogue. They wanted that conversation. What they got was crushed. Crushed. Some of those people crushed in the square and in other streets of Beijing. But they could not crush the spirit of Tiananmen. And that's why it's important these 20 years later. I remember meeting Chai-Ling in Paris. She was newly escaped from China. So proud of her, so courageous, and so many other heroes of that movement. Most of them, many of them, when they got out of China, assigned my man before the tank poster in my office, which is getting old now, but I'm very proud of the signatures that are on there. They're the signatures to a Declaration of Freedom in China. And what does freedom mean? It means openness, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, accountability, rule of law according to the Chinese Constitution. So what is important for us to do now? Who would have ever thought, all of you here who are gathered, some great leaders for democratic freedoms in China, who would have ever thought that 20 years later we'd still be in this situation? That the same cowardice that inspired inspired is the word, that insisted that the regime crush the people in the square, clear that square by such and such a time. The same cowardice that did that, that same fear of the people exists in China today. We were told 20 years ago that peaceful evolution, economic reform would lead to political reform. And indeed, the economic reform has occurred. And I was so pleased that Secretary Clinton said in the statement that China has made enormous progress economically. I saw that last week in China. But she also says that a state, a China that has made all that progress, should examine openly the darker events of its past and provide a public accounting of those killed, detained, or missing, both to learn